What's going on? Welcome back to another video. And if you're new here, my name's Tanner. And in today's video, I'm going to be doing a 4-year review of what it's been like the last 4 years since I decided to quit my 9 to 5 and go full time into entrepreneurship. All right, so I'm not going to waste any time. I'm just going to jump right into it and get straight to the point. But I just want to start this video off. If you're watching this right now and you're tired of waking up every day unmotivated, going to your 9 to 5, taking orders from a boss that you hate, and just not being able to make enough money, you're going to want to stick around until the end of this video. So going back a little over 4 years ago, I was working full-time as a pilot in my hometown doing charter flights, flight instructing, survey, and working in the shop a little bit when there was no flying to do. And let's just say I was left unfulfilled. I wasn't very motivated, and it really sucked, to be honest, because I always thought, ever since I was a little kid, my mom even has a few drawings saved from when I was in 3rd grade. I drew on a piece of paper. The teacher asked us, "What do we want to be when we grow up?" And I drew a picture of what's supposed to be an airplane, like a little Cessna, and I wrote on there that I daydream about airplanes. And I also have another one that says, "What I want to be when I grow up is a pilot because it could be fun to fly." And now I know what you might be thinking is, why are you complaining about becoming a pilot? You fulfilled your dream of what you wanted to do ever since you were a little kid. But the truth of the matter is once, I love flying. Don't get me wrong. I love flying. But once it became a job and a career, it was no longer fun. It was just another job. And I think it has more to do just with, waking up to what your purpose really is when you do become an adult. We always have dreams and aspirations when we're little of like what we want to do when we get older. But then once you actually get there, I think this is anything in life, what we tend to think like, once I achieve this goal, or once I make this much, or once I move to this place, then I'm going to be fulfilled. Then I'll, get this certain feeling. And that's what we're all longing for, is a certain feeling of like accomplishment or, acceptance or whatever it may be. But I just started to realize once I got to it, like I said, where I thought I wanted to be, I didn't feel fulfilled. I felt like something was still missing. Like I was meant for more. And like I said, I love flying, but once it became a career, I just realized, you know, waking up every day and being around people that don't motivate you, and having a boss that just you feel like doesn't appreciate you and just can push you around, it was just really unmotivating. So anyways, I was flying for this place in my hometown and I was tired of it. Every day I was coming there and felt unmotivated. I was sick of being pushed around by my boss every direction and just not being able to be like in control of my time either, or my income. I realized really quick at that place, that it really wasn't a career that I wanted to go down, or like a path that I wanted to go down long term. Because I started missing my son's birthday parties, Christmases, holidays, just all kinds of life events, and I was starting to be gone all the time. And I started to realize if I continued to go down that path, it just wasn't a lifestyle that I really wanted to live. So anyways, when I was working there, I finally reached 1,500 flight hours so I could go fly for the airlines. I always thought that was my end goal. And this was in early or mid 2020, right before, I don't even want to say it on here so this video doesn't get shadow banned, but we all know what happened in 2020. It was right around that time, right before everything happened. And I had my 1,500 flight hours. I submitted my application to start flying for SkyWest Airlines. I went to my interview, ended up getting hired. My training was supposed to start about 3 months later, but then boom, the state of the world, everything happened around that time, and my flight training actually ended up getting canceled. This was a big pivotal moment in my career, and ultimately which led me going full time into entrepreneurship. And let's just say it's been the best decision that I've ever made. So prior to all of this happening, I got, like I said, I got hired at SkyWest Airlines, but my training wasn't set to start until like 3 months in advance. So since I got the like okay that I was hired, I decided to quit my job flying for the place that I was at in my hometown. And then all of this happened, and then I was kind of like, oh shit, what the hell's next? Um, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of scared at first, but I felt deep down like something tell me like, this is your moment and your opportunity to seize it and go all in on entrepreneurship. Because that's, to be honest, going back even a little bit, when I was working full time at this place in my hometown, Um, I've always been flipping things ever since I was a little kid. I have a separate video that you can go watch. I'm not going to go all into my story on how I got started like flipping things, but I got started on accident when I was 14 years old, flipping a bunch of stuff that I found on the side of the road during fall cleanup. And that ultimately led to me getting into flipping cars, specifically Subaru, because I'm from Bismarck, North Dakota, and people love all-wheel drive cars here. And I was very mechanically inclined. Well, I still am, but I could pick up these Subarus for super cheap because the head gaskets would always go out, and I'd only need about $500 in parts to fix it up. And I could typically have the head gaskets changed within like 8 hours, and then go and resell that car for a profit. Typically, I'd make around $2,500 to $5,000 per car. And I ended up flipping over 100 cars in high school and into my early 20s when I was flying for this place. And I remember having a conversation with my wife one time when I was working at that place. And like I said, I was just getting tired of it there, but I didn't know what to do. But I didn't fully trust myself to like go full time, doing something like flipping or reselling stuff, or just into entrepreneurship in general, because I was just, what most people are, is so tied to that comfort of that paycheck and like guaranteed income coming in. Because let's just be honest, going full time into entrepreneurship, there's no guarantee in anything. You create your own success. So I just remember this was like 6 months before I quit at this place, and I was having a conversation with my wife, girlfriend at that time. We weren't married yet, but I just told her, I'm like, you know what? This is what really led me going into full time into entrepreneurship too. Is I think whether you go to college or do a trade or whatever, I feel like they sell us all a pipe dream and say that you're going to get out, you're going to go to college or whatever, and then you're going to get out and you're going to make this, and it's usually never the case. You always, and I get it, you start at the bottom of the totem pole, but I hated not being in control of my time or my income. And I think I was only making like maybe $4,000 or $5,000 a month flying. I just thought, holy crap, I just spent all this time and money to do all my training, and I'm only making this much. And I was having a conversation with my girlfriend at that time, and I was like, it's crazy. I make way more flipping like one car a month than I do working full time, trading 40 hours a week, flying for this company. It just doesn't make sense. And then she even asked me, and she's like, well, why don't you just go, do that full time? And I was just like, well, that's just something I do on the side. I can't do that full time. I need that steady paycheck. And that's where they get you. That's where, that's how they lock you into the matrix, is, trading your time for income. So yeah, my training ended up getting canceled, and I already quit my job at the place that I was working at. So I was just sitting there, and I asked my wife, I'm like, well, shit, what am I going to do now? Because in my head at that time, I was like, well, I'm going to do my airline training or whatever, and then start flying for the airlines, and I'll get more established. And at that time, my wife, she was going for her master's degree, and her program actually ended up getting shut down that year, or like delayed a year. So my head at that time, I was like, well, I'll get established with the airlines. You'll finish your master's degree, and then once we're more established, let's say in 5 to 10 years from now, we'll move to Arizona, because that was always a big goal of ours. Going back to, like I said, when I was a little kid and wanted to become a pilot, I also always sat there and dreamed and envisioned of living somewhere warm, because in North Dakota it gets really cold in the winter, and I'd love it in the summer here, but when it would come fall and winter, all I could do is just visualize like palm trees and like warm weather. And it's crazy because when all this happened, I had a friend at that time. We're no longer friends, but at that time, um, he actually ended up getting laid off or something from his job too, and he wanted to move to Arizona as well. So he actually ended up asking me. He said, "Hey, do you guys want to move to Arizona together? Get an apartment and then figure it out?" And at first, I was like, 'cause I kind of already knew in my head, I'm like, moving in with roommates and friends and stuff usually always is like a recipe for a disaster. So at first I told my wife, like, no, we don't have enough money, and, what if there's no jobs? And I just had this like scarcity mindset, because like I said, I just got the news that, I don't know if I'll be able to go to the airlines, which to be honest, I think was a blessing in disguise, because when I went to that interview and then, got hired, got my training scheduled and everything, I had this pit in my stomach of just, like I said, I knew the path that it led down, and it just wasn't, it didn't feel right. So I see it all as a blessing in disguise. So long story short, I eventually ended up agreeing to it. I sat there and thought about it for a little bit, and I'm like, what the hell? What do we really got to lose at this point? Let's give it a shot. Like I said, I had about $7,000 or $8,000 saved up, and my wife and I and my friend at that time and his girlfriend, we all took a trip. We booked it down to Phoenix for like 3 days, toured a bunch of apartments, and we ended up finding one. So we ended up applying for it. We got approved, and then we moved down literally the following week. So once we got down there, that's when shit really hit the fan, and I was just like, well, we were splitting rent with my buddy at that time, and so it was it was super cheap. I think at that time when things were still cheap, I think splitting rent was like $850 with all the utilities each, and then gas and food. So our expenses weren't really very high, and we started at first. I did some DoorDash actually to get some income coming in. We were making like $150, $200 a night. We'd only do it in the evenings when there was like a dinner rush. So we were bringing in some income doing that, and while we were doing that, we were doing what most people do, like you're doing right now, is watching YouTube videos, listening to all kinds of podcasts, and just seeing different things that we can do. Because moving down there, when I was in North Dakota and I'd flip Subarus, I had my brother-in-law's garage and tools and all kinds of stuff to work on cars. But moving down there was a completely new market. It was foreign to me, and I didn't have the same tools and resources that I did here. So I was trying to like mastermind and just figure out, like I said, I didn't want to work a job. We moved there in the heat of summer. It was the middle of July when we moved to Phoenix, Arizona. And I remember actually going back a little bit. I actually did apply for a job at Tesla. Tesla likes to install solar roofs. And when we got there, I was like, oh, I can't do this. I'm not going to go sit on a roof when it's 120 degrees, and I don't even know how to roof. But I was just, like I said, I had this scarcity mindset. Like, I have to get a job because you get so used to that paycheck. But anyways, we were doing a little bit of DoorDash to bring in some income, listening to podcasts and all kinds of stuff. And that's when I first discovered Amazon FBA. So if you're not familiar with what Amazon FBA is, in simple terms, it just means anytime you order something on Amazon, Amazon doesn't own all their products. Most of the people selling on Amazon actually are third-party sellers like myself or you. Anybody can sell stuff on Amazon. So I thought, why don't we give this a try? And true story here, I just binge watched a whole bunch of YouTube videos on like where to start and different ideas. And I started off by completely wrong way. I I thought I had to create my own product or buy a product on Alibaba and then go list it on Amazon and create my own listing and do all this complicated stuff. So I got a credit card and it had like a $4,000 limit. And I decided I'm not political at all. I'm not even going to go there. I think politics are stupid, but I thought in my head, it was right before election time, again, around 2020. And I thought, hey, why don't I get some like election signs that people put in their yard, like those yard signs, and post those on Amazon. I thought in my head, I'm going to crush it. So I ordered $2,000 worth of signs on Alibaba from China and put it on a credit card. Took like a month to get here. And by the time they arrived, it was only like maybe 2 or 3 weeks before the election. So I was like, damn, I didn't really think this through. I was like, I got to sell these before the election. Otherwise, who the hell is going to buy all these signs? I had like 10,000 signs. Got them really super cheap. I think I got them like for like 5 cents a sign or something crazy. But anyways, I was like, holy crap. So I hurried up. I made my listing on Amazon. I got these signs on there and I thought I'm going to crush it. And that wasn't the case, let's just say. I ended up maybe getting a few sales here and there. And I was like, what the hell? What am I going to do? So I got an idea. I was like, this was, like I said, probably 2 weeks before election. I was like, I got to recoup my funds back somehow. So I ended up going to Walmart and I bought one of those like tents that people use for like farmers markets and like different events and stuff. It was like $100. Put that on the credit card too. And then true story, I went and set up this booth, this tent on the side of the road on North Scottsdale Road. And I set up all these signs. They came in big boxes. So I'd take a few out of the boxes and I'd set them all around this tent and I'd hang them from the tent. And then right away, people started coming and they're like, yeah, how much? And I was like, I don't really know what to price them at. So The first day I sold all of them for $5 a piece, and I ended up making like 300 bucks or 300 or 400 bucks the first day. And I was like, there's something here. And then the next day when I went back, I was like, I'm going to raise my price a little bit. I'm going to sell each sign for $10. And then the next day I ended up making like $500 or $600. But like I said, I had a whole bunch of signs, so I was like, I need to figure out a way to just get rid of as much as I can. So what I ended up doing is my buddy too. When I moved down there, I showed him how to, or I was trying to show him how to do all this stuff on Amazon as well. So he ended up ordering some products to sell on Amazon too, which were, everybody was wearing masks and they were breaking out. So I told him to order these things called 3D mask brackets. So it was basically this plastic thing that you put your mask over or whatever. And he was having the same problems. He couldn't get them sold on Amazon. So I was like, hey, I don't want to sit on the side of the road and sell these election signs by myself, because it was getting, people get weird when it's election time. It doesn't matter who's running or what, left wing, right wing, people get all stir crazy. So I was like, dude, the first 2 days are a little crazy. But I was like, if you want to come with me, we can make like a package deal here. I was like, I'll just say, if people buy 5 of my signs, $25, and we'll throw in one of these mask brackets too, or whatever, to help him make some money. And so I didn't have to sit there alone. So we agreed on doing that, and he came with me, and I'd give him $5 each sale. I'd get 20 and I'd be able to offload 5 signs, and he get $5. So I ended up working out, and we did that for about the remainder of the 2 weeks until the police ended up shutting us down because it was just getting crazy, and other people started setting up booths, like doing the same thing, and it was crazy. But long story short, ended up recouping my money back from that failed endeavor. And then that's when I discovered that you could sell used books on Amazon. And I discovered that's actually how Amazon started. So after that failed endeavor, what I started to do is go to all these Goodwills, and I'd scan the barcodes on the back of the books with this Amazon app, and it would tell me if they were profitable or not and how fast they were selling. So we ended up doing that, and we'd send the books to Amazon. So they would take care of all the shipping and all of that as well. Ended up making, it took time to source everything. And then by the time they get to Amazon, that's when they become available to purchase. But our first month, once we started doing sales or getting sales, we ended up making like $6,000 our first month. And then on the second and third month, I think we did $8,000 our second month, and then started doing about $10,000 a month consistently. That's where we capped out, by going to Goodwills and scanning them. But we ended up capping out at $10,000 a month, and I told my wife, like, hey, let's scale this thing up. There's really something here. So what I ended up doing is I ended up negotiating with thrift stores like Goodwill and small mom and pop ones, recyclers, libraries, to buy all of their used books in bulk. So basically, what I would do, I'll put a clip in here, but I'd buy big truckloads full of, it was called a Gaylord, basically a huge box filled with 800 to 1,000 books each. So we got all these Gaylords, these big boxes of books, and we ended up having to get a warehouse too. Well, it was like a big giant storage unit in the ghetto of Phoenix. It was only like $500 a month with a tin roof. And that's what we used to store all of our books in. And then we'd have to scan the barcodes on the back of each book. And it was a total gamble. There was obviously no guarantee that any books were going to be profitable inside of that Gaylord, versus when you'd go to Goodwill and scan each book individually, you'd only buy it if it was profitable. So it was obviously a little bit more of a gamble, more of a risk. But what ended up happening, again, this was 2020 when the state of the world was doing what it was doing. And what Amazon ended up doing is putting restock limits on our account, meaning they only wanted essential products coming into their warehouses. So books, I guess, weren't deemed essential. So basically what happened is, prior to all of this, we could send unlimited amount of books to Amazon. It didn't matter. And what ended up happening is our restock limits went to 5,000. 5,000 books is what we could send to Amazon, but we already had 10,000 there, meaning we couldn't send any more books in until we got below 5,000. So what this ended up doing is basically put us out of business overnight. We had all these contracts and stuff, and everything was going, and we were still making a profit. But obviously, with scaling things up, you got to reinvest a lot more back into your business. And like I said, with that happening, it put us out of business overnight, hurt us financially, and that's where I felt defeated. I was like, geez, well, maybe I'll just go back and be a pilot and whatever. But What ended up happening is we ended up moving back to North Dakota for about 3 months, and my wife and I just got a small apartment together. And we were like sitting there. At this point, we really didn't have much money when we came back here, and after getting out of our leases and contracts that we had with all these suppliers that we were buying books from, we maybe walked away with like $4,000. That's what we had. And we even ended up having to sell our good car to recoup some funds. And then we had a shitty ass van, drove all the way back to North Dakota in this van, used what money we had to get into an apartment because we didn't want to stay with family or anything, like be a burden to anybody. So we moved, got into an apartment, and we were there for about 3 months and just sat there. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I was like in a state of like psychosis. I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't want to go back and work a job, but maybe I'm not meant for to be an entrepreneur. But I didn't let that hold me back. Again, my wife and I were sitting there, and she came. I remember she came to me. I'm not even gonna lie. I was sitting in the tub. I was sitting like take baths for like hours, and I was just depressed. And I was like, this really sucks. And my wife just sat. She came in there one time, and she's like, Tanner. She's like, we got to do something. She's like, why don't we go? Why don't we move back down there and go all in on furniture flipping? And I was like, what? I was like, what do you mean? So going back a little bit, when we were in Phoenix, living with my buddy in this apartment and doing the Amazon stuff, my wife and I, we were taking out the trash one night, and one of our neighbors was actually they were carrying a nice ass couch to the garbage can, and we were just like, what's going on? I was like, you got bed bugs or what? And they were like, no, we just got this couch like a few months ago, but we're moving tomorrow. They're moving back to California, and they're like, if you want it, you can have it. So I was like, with my everything that I've done flipping and stuff, I was like, hell yeah. So my wife and I, we brought it up to our fourth floor apartment. Thank God we had an elevator. But we brought it in there in our tiny little living room, cleaned it up, took some pictures, and I said, let's list this thing on Facebook Marketplace and see if we can, make some profit. And by surprise, we ended up selling it the very next. Somebody messaged us the night that same night we listed it, and somebody messaged us that night and said, hey, can I come check it out tomorrow? We only listed it for like $300, and we are like, yeah, sure. Ended up coming the next morning, checked it out, didn't even try to negotiate or nothing, gave us $300. And we were like, damn, that was pretty cool. But it didn't really, we didn't really go any further with it. We just thought like, wow, that was cool, and kept focusing on this Amazon thing. And that actually ended up happening one more time at that same apartment when somebody else was moving out. We got a bunch of furniture. We got like their couch, a bedroom set, dressers, and all this stuff, and ended up flipping it. But like I said, at that time, we never put any more like thought into it. Um, but yeah, so when we came back to North Dakota, I was sitting in the tub, and my wife came in there, and she's like, "We got to do something." She's like, "Why don't we go all in on furniture flipping?" And at first, I was like, "Well, how are we going to make that happen?" Because at this point, we used pretty much the 4,000 that we had. We were paying rent with that, and getting food and all of that, and just sitting in the house, kind of depressed and like trying to figure out what to do. Um, we were down literally to like $500. So that's where my wife was like, Tanner, we got to figure something out. And she said it was the next day after this. She's like, I woke up and she was like packing stuff up, and she's like, I'm going back down to Phoenix. You can come with or not. She's like, I don't care, but I'm going. And I was like, say no more. I was like, again, I was like, what do we got to lose? Let's fucking do it. You only live once, right? So we ended up packing up everything into this shitty van, and then my mom ended up taking our son for about 2 weeks, and then they flew down to Phoenix. But she took our son, and we drove straight through 24 hours. We took turns sleeping. I drove 12 hours, and then my wife drove about 12 hours straight through Phoenix. And then we stayed with a different buddy on his couch. And then the next morning, we just got right after it. We got a little tiny storage unit to put our belongings in, and then we also got another little bit bigger. I'll put a clip of it in here, but it was only like 3 feet by 8 feet long, 3 feet wide or 4 feet maybe, and 8 feet long. And that's what we used to store our furniture in. And then, like I said, all we had was our van. So what we started doing, started going to all the thrift stores, the same ones that we were going to find books. We went there and started getting all of the furniture that we could. Um, Figured out how we could buy it as cheap as possible. We got this coupon on our phone to get 20% off at Goodwill. And then, started using our van, picking up as much furniture as we could. We'd bring it to our little storage unit. And then the first day we did it, we ended up making about $300 profit. So long story short, we ended up flipping our way out of the position that we got ourselves in. And funny story, it was like our first week using the van to go pick up furniture. We got a big ass couch at Goodwill and we put it in the back of our van because all the back seats folded down. And my wife went to go close the trunk and we broke out the back window. And we are like, damn. So we had to tape up the back window. It looked all ghetto. My buddy, the house that we were staying at, he said, "Hey, I'm leaving this week, so if you guys want to use my truck, by all means, go ahead." So we were like, "Thank you, God." And we took advantage of that, and then picked up as much couches and furniture as we could. I think that week we ended up making like $3,000 or $4,000 profit, and then all of our credit cards were maxed out too from like doing living and moving back down there and all kinds of stuff. So we knew like long term we're not going to be able to use this van, and if by picking up one piece at a time with this van, it's going to take a long time to get out of this position that we're in, and we're not going to be able to use my buddy's truck forever either. So our plan was to get a Penske truck, but in order to do so, you had to pre-authorize like the first week or two on a credit card. So that week he was gone, we flipped as much stuff as we could just to be able to pay down enough on one of our credit cards just to go max it out again to pre-authorize for a few weeks. And I think we also we ended up getting a bigger storage unit because we were obviously getting more stuff. So we put that on the credit card as well. But by getting this box truck, we were able to pick up like 6 or 8 couches at once versus picking up one individual couch or dresser at once using the van or my buddy's truck. So this obviously was a lot more efficient. We were able to pick up a lot more and be able to deliver a lot more as well, and just be a lot more efficient with our time. And then true story, that the first week we got that box truck, we ended up making like $5,000 profit our first week. It was literally wake up at like 5, 6 in the morning, start cleaning couches really early in the morning before it got hot, and then we do any deliveries or pickups later in the afternoon and evening. And we ended up making $5,000 profit, and then we ended up getting an apartment, got approved, and I think we had to pay like $2,500 to move in, for like first month's rent, deposit, all of that. And what we ended up doing is that same buddy that we were staying at his house, he told me like, "Hey, I'm actually going to be gone another week, so if you guys need to use my truck or whatever, go ahead." And I told him, I said, "No, appreciate it, bro." We ended up getting a box truck, but I got a wild idea at this point. I was like, I was like, instead of us going to stay at our apartment, why don't we, furnish it, list it on an Airbnb for at least that, see if we can get a booking that one week while he's gone and just stay at his place. So I told him, I'm like, "Hey, we don't need your truck, but if we can crash at your place one more week, that'd be awesome." He's like, "Yeah, go ahead." So what we ended up doing, we ended up furnishing we got the keys, and the same day we moved in, we ended up furnishing it with some of our belongings that we were going to flip. And I actually ended up borrowing my buddy's coffee table and a few other like pieces to go furnish our apartment, to go put it on Airbnb for a week. And we actually ended up getting a booking right away. So it was somebody local to Phoenix that was having some work done on their house. And they needed a place to stay, so they booked our place for 1 week. And our rent at this place was like $1,700 or $1,800 a month. And that 1 week booking ended up recouping all of our funds for like 1 month's worth of rent. And they stayed for 1 week, and it was towards the end of the week of their stay, they ended up reaching out and they're like, "Hey, if not, it's totally fine because I know you didn't have any availability, because like I said, we only put it on Airbnb available that 1 week that he was gone." And she ended up reaching out and she was like, "Hey, would we be able to extend? Our contractors are taking a little longer than expected." And we were like, I don't want to say no, but like, I don't know. I don't necessarily want to say yes, but we ended up saying yes, and she ended up staying another week. And by those 2 weeks of her staying there, it actually ended up paying for like the next 2.5 months worth of rent. at our apartment. So just a crazy little story there about, part of the journey that I thought was funny. But, fast forward now 4 years later, and everything that we've been able to accomplish since then is just crazy thinking back. And that's why I wanted to create this video and share it with you to show you guys what's possible. And, even when you do start something, don't get discouraged if things don't happen right away or happen the way that you thought, and never give up. The only time you fail is when you give up. But I have a ton of other crazy stories of, things in between that I'm not going to go all into right now. But fast forward 4 years later, so we ended up flipping couches. We eventually niched way down and just focused on flipping couches, and we were doing about $10,000 a month, just operating out of one storage unit. The box truck that ended up costing us about $1,100 a week, and we could pay for it, but it was just a constant hustle. $1,100 a week for the box truck with the mileage that we were driving and insurance, and then about another $500 in fuel every week. So eventually what we ended up doing is buying a truck. So we got ourselves out of the position that we were in, got more stable, and we knew how much we needed to make. So eventually I ended up getting my own pickup, and then we were back to picking up one couch at a time. But I knew like we didn't want to flip couches full time and be in a storage unit. But it helped bring our expenses down. My monthly payment on my truck then was only like $600 a month versus paying, I think, like $1,700 or $1,600 a month or excuse me, not a month, a week. This was a week for the box truck. About $1,500 to $1,600 every single week was, our expenses for the box truck, which I said, like I said, was worth it because it could obviously pay for itself if you were doing the work. But like I said, we ended up getting a truck, brought our expenses down to only $600 a month for a vehicle to be able to transport our product, which was couches, and then just operated out of the hell was it, like a 10 by 20 storage unit. We could fit like 15 couches in there. We'd basically pick them up, bring them there. We reverse engineered how much we wanted to make. We figured out like what we could sell things for as far as couches, what we need to buy them for. We got really good down in Phoenix, where 90% of our inventory we actually ended up getting for free. And we were able to make about $10,000 a month, focusing maybe like 4 to 5 hours a day on it. And in the meantime, what I ended up doing is I always knew I wanted to get into real estate, but I never knew, how that would happen. So what I actually ended up doing, this is tying in with where we're at now at this point in our journey and how I got there. But what we ended up doing, full time, or about the first year, I just focused on couch flipping, figuring out all of that, learning more about business, how to set up an LLC, taxes, and all of this foreign stuff that was brand new to me. Well, like I said, I always knew I wanted to get into real estate. And on the second year, what we started doing when we were picking up and delivering couches, I got an idea. I started watching a bunch of YouTube videos on how to get into real estate, where you should start. And where I think most people should start is wholesaling. If you go buy like a list to call to, people like pre-foreclosures or people that inherited houses, you're looking at spending like $1,000, $2,000 to go buy a list of those houses. But I ended up getting an idea. I'm like, hey, I'm already driving through different neighborhoods every day when I'm either picking up or delivering couches. Why don't I just take note of properties that like look run down and then target those people? Basically what it's called is driving for dollars. So you go drive through different neighborhoods and add or take note of the properties that show signs of distress. And that's what I ended up doing to be efficient with my time and balling on a budget. Is I'd go, anytime we were picking up and delivering a couch, anytime we'd drive past a house that's showing signs of distress, I would add it to my driving for dollars list. And I ended up adding about 20 to 30 houses every single day. And at the end of the week, what I would do is it's called skip tracing. I would skip trace those addresses to get the homeowner's information. And I started cold calling and hand texting each one to see if they'd be interested in selling their house. Long story short, after staying consistent, I ended up closing my first deal. It took me about 6 months to close my first deal, which wasn't very big. It was about like $5,000. But recently, after 2 years of following up with one of these people on my driving for dollars list, just this past May, I ended up closing my biggest deal from wholesaling from doing this. It was literally when we were couch flipping. I added this house when we were couch flipping, I still remember it clear as day. I was like, damn, that house needs some work. And I even have the messages. I'll put them on here. I just reached out and I'm like, hey, is this Crystal, the owner of, well, I'm not going to put the address, but 123 Main Street in Phoenix, Arizona? She responded right away. What I would do is I'd cold call them. If they wouldn't answer, I'd leave a voicemail, and then immediately I'd send them a text. And she didn't answer, and then I sent her a text, and then she responded right away. But this was back in 2022 when I first reached out to her. Fast forward, this goes to show, as far as anything, the fortune is always in the follow up, whether you're couch flipping, whether you're wholesaling, whatever you're doing, the fortune is always in the follow up. So I stayed consistent following up with this homeowner for over 2 years and ended up closing this deal this past May and made $65,000. But I'm not telling you any of this to flex or to brag or say, "Wow, look at me and everything I accomplished," but just to show you and share my story with you and show you what's possible and hopefully inspire you to get after it and do something. If you're feeling called for more and you're watching this right now and you say you've been praying for a sign, this has to be your sign to do something else. I hope this video inspires you. To take action and do something. If you are interested in doing anything that I've done, like flipping stuff, starting a reselling business, I've been able to scale up what we were doing as far as flipping furniture to over $20,000 a month. We eventually ended up getting a warehouse and bought our own box truck. And since then, we've decided to pivot into a purely online business model, selling new luxury furniture, leveraging the drop shipping model. That's getting way more into the weeds, but the last 4 years have just been completely wild. If somebody would have told me 4 years ago when I was a pilot at that place that I didn't like working at, that I was going to be doing everything that I'm doing now, I'd literally look at you like you're crazy and say, there's no way. But I hope this video inspires you. If you are interested in doing anything like I've done with flipping stuff and starting a reselling business, if you're new to entrepreneurship, I really think that's where you should start, especially if you don't have any past like business knowledge or a ton of capital to get started. Go and flip shit. You can literally find stuff for free on Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp, Craigslist. It doesn't matter. And I literally give the whole game away for free on my YouTube channel. I documented videos when we were down in Phoenix flipping couches. I have even more that got taken down for some reason, but I ended up getting them back. I'm going to be posting them as reposts, like flashbacks every now and then, but I still have some videos on my channel live in action when we were flipping couches full time out of a storage unit. So definitely go check those out. So my phone ended up dying, but I'm going to wrap this up. As I was saying, if you are feeling called to do more, you're sick of your job, you're sick of your boss telling you what to do and not just not being able to live life on your terms, having time and financial freedom, and you don't have a lot of past like business experience like I did when I first started, or a ton of capital, I would 100% start with reselling stuff. You can source all kinds of stuff for free, even on platforms like Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp, Craigslist, you name it, and easily be able to make $10,000 your first month doing it. If you're a hustler, if you're not afraid of a little bit of hard work, you're not lazy, I would definitely start there. But that's going to be it for this video, guys. If you want access to a free guide that I put together of everything that I wish I would have known when I first started reselling stuff, I put together a free guide. It'll be linked in the description below. It's called the Reseller's Playbook. But that's going to be it for this video. If you got something out of it, drop it in the comments what you got most out of this video, or if you have any video recommendations for me in the future. But other than that, I'll see you guys in the next one.